Okay, Shalom Aleichem. We're continuing finally over here, section 3, in chapter 9 of the Chatzar Yosef. We're on page 106 on the bottom. We'll start with the Gemara. This is, of course, this story is a continuation of sections 1 and 2, which we called, section 1 was called The Show Must Go On, section 2 was called Smartly Stupid. This is called section 3 now, and the title of it is If the Shoe Fits. And we'll explain now how it goes. So the Gemara says, we're going to read it in English for simplicity's sake, bottom of page 106. Just as a reminder, Rabbi Yochanan was a guy's body, or he was alive at the time, but he was presumed dead. They snuck his body out of the besieged city of Yerushalayim that was suffering from famine and a lot of political division. And the Rabbi Yochanan was snuck out, and he started speaking, negotiating with Vespasian, who was at that time the Roman general in charge of the siege. It was already 3 years into the siege, and they had a back and forth conversation, and now the conversation continues. In that conversation, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai called him a king. And Vespasian said, "You're liable for death because I'm not a king. You can't call me a king." And then Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai went ahead to show him proofs from the prophets that no, the only person that could actually take Yerushalayim has to be a king. So now the Gemara continues. In the meantime, as they were talking, a messenger arrived from Rome and said to Vespasian, "Rise, for the Caesar has died." At that moment, and the noblemen of Rome plan to seat you as the leader. At that time, Vespasian was wearing one shoe. Only one shoe. When he tried to put on the other shoe, the other one, it would not go on his foot. You heard the story?
No, just...
He tried to remove the other shoe that he was already wearing, but it would not come off. Why is the Gemara giving us these details? He said, "What is this? What's going on?" Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to him, "Do not be distressed, for good tidings have come to you. Good news has come to you. As it is written in Mishlei, good tidings fattens bone. It swells you up." He just got good news that he's going to be the king, right?
So that's why the shoe couldn't fit, and that's why he couldn't take it off.
Yeah. Rather, what is the remedy, says Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai? How do you fix this issue? Have someone with whom you are displeased come and pass before you, as it is written in another verse in Mishlei. He's showing him how all the answers are in the Torah. The whole conversation, he's speaking with his Roman, he's giving him, like, quoting him verses from the Torah. Or this is like the 4th or 5th verse already, continuing from the last one. It says in Mishlei, a broken spirit will desiccate bone. You know what desiccate means? To shrivel up, to shrink, to dehydrate. So Vespasian did so. He had someone pass by him that he didn't like, and then his shoe went on his foot. He was able to put on the other shoe. Vespasian said to him, to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, "Since you, Jews, are so wise, why don't you come to me? Why didn't you come to me until now?" Right? That was the original question he asked him. Why did you wait so long, 3 years? And he's asking him again, the same question. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to him, "Didn't I already tell you?" He already gave him the answer why he couldn't, because the Bar Yonim were stopping them from the inside. Didn't want to let him negotiate with him. This is all from section 2. And Vespasian said to him again, "I told you already what I have to say also." So, circular conversation. Right? Vespasian gave him back the parable with the whole the snake around the barrel of honey, which we spoke about as well. Vespasian then said to Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, "I will be going to Rome to accept my new position, and I will send someone else in my place. But ask something of me that I can give you." He said, I'll fulfill a request of yours for this good thing he did for him, helping him out with the shoe. So Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai said to him, "Give me Yavne and its sages." Yavne was the city where a lot of the sages already fled to. They're already there learning Torah over there. The yeshivas were moved over there. Sanhedrin was moved over there temporarily. So he said, basically, spare that city. Don't kill the Chachamim. And also, the dynasty of Rabban Gamliel, that's the dynasty of Hillel HaZaken, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, all the same dynasty. And give me doctors to help Rabbi Tzadok.
thought he died already.
Huh?
I thought he died already this one, no?
Rabbi Tzadok never said he died. No,
The guy who was talking dry figs?
yeah, we spoke about him in chapter 8. He's the one who would fast. Remember, he fasted for 40 years. He was very, very malnourished. So he said, give me doctors to heal him. Those were his 3 requests. Rav Yosef, and some say Rabbi Akiva, read the following verse about him. The same verse from section 2, Isaiah 44:25. I'm sorry, I skipped it. What was the verse? Turns wise men backward and stultifies their knowledge. They said again, they applied this verse again to Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai. Why? Why again? Why this time? He should have said to him, the suggestion what he should have responded to Vespasian, to leave the Jews alone altogether. Leave us alone. End the war now. But Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai gauged that perhaps Vespasian will not do that much for him. It's asking for a lot, right? They've already invested so much time, money, and effort in this war with the Jews. They're not just going to get up and leave. And if he asked for that, then there would not even be a small salvation. This small thing that he asked for to save the Chachamim and the lineage of Gamliel, he would not have given to him. Look at note 2. This is a side point. By saying I will be going to Rome to accept my new position and I will send someone else in my place, Vespasian was indirectly saying to Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai that he should not request that the entire city be spared. Because he said, I'm going to put someone else in my place. Like, we're not just ending this. Vespasian planned to complete the conquest of Yerushalayim no matter what. That is why Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai did not request that, but instead made smaller requests that Vespasian could grant, and that would allow Torah Judaism to survive at least in the minimum amount possible from that point forward. Good. That's from the Metzudat David. The last paragraph in the Gemara. The remedy for healing Rabbi Tzadok, what is it? How do you heal Rabbi Tzadok? Remember, he was fasting for 40 years. So the Gemara puts it in. How do you do it? The first day you give him water to drink that contained pareh in there. Pareh is a Aramaic word. Rashi is going to explain what it means. The next day you give him water containing sipuka. Another word that Rashi will explain, I believe. And then the next day you give him water containing flour until his intestines broadened little by little. That's what the doctors did for him. And that's how they healed him. Made him better. Let's do Rashi in the Gemara.
Why didn't they have Jewish doctors to do this?
I don't know, maybe they weren't as advanced as the Roman doctors at the time. Or they were also suffering inside, they were malnourished, they were starving. 3 years of siege. Whatever the reason was. Rashi says, would not come off. The shoe would not come off. What does it mean? Because his limbs fattened from the joy of the good news that he was going to be king. Swelled up. Next Rashi, and a broken heart desiccates the bone. That's from Mishlei. A broken heart shrinks the bone. In other words, when your spirits break due to the hater, due to the one he hates, I believe it should say, your bone will dry up and get smaller, allowing you to slip on the other shoe. Right, that's simple. Next Rashi, give me Yavne. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, don't destroy the city of Yavne. Why? In other words, so that you should not destroy it, and do not kill the sages. That's what he was asking for, because the sages were there.
It is present day Yavne.
Present day Yavne, do you know? Is it still called Yavne today?
I'm assuming it is, but I don't know. I don't exactly.
You gotta look it up. Google Maps. I don't know. Next Rashi says, and the dynasty of Rabban Gamliel, do not destroy them. Who is that? This is the family of the presidentship of Israel, the Nasi, the Nasiut, the leader. He was asking that Vespasian not kill them so that the rulership of the house of David should not be eradicated, because they are also in line with the house of David, with the dynasty of David, David Melech, from the tribe of Yehudah. I actually put the whole dynasty here of the Chachamim, of the presidentship, in note 3 over here. It goes from Hillel HaZaken, then his son Shimon ben Hillel HaNasi, then his son Rabban Gamliel HaZaken, then his son Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, and then his son Rabban Gamliel, who was the son of Rabban Shimon Gamliel, who's also called Rabban Gamliel of Yavne. So they were named after their grandfather. He's named after his grandfather, pretty much.
It's still a city.
Right.
I thought he was the leader
Who?
at the time. Wasn't he the leader of the?
He was one of the spiritual giants of the time, but the presidentship was a dynastic thing, father-son.
Okay, but I thought
So he wasn't part of that.
No, wasn't he? Who was the Cohen, or the not the Cohen, the guy that when Kamsan Bar comes over, he came, he said, "Don't do it."
That was Zechariah ben Afkulas.
So he was number one on the Sanhedrin, was he not? Because you said there was.
There was different opinions what his position was. Some say he was the head Kohen over there of that certain Mishmar, of that group of Kohanim that was serving at the time. Some say he was the head of Sanhedrin. Different opinions of who he was. Again, one of the major opinion leaders of that time. Good. Next Rashi over here. Water that contained pareh. So to heal Rabbi Tzadok, the first day, the doctors gave him water with pareh. What is that? Water in which bran was soaked in. What is bran? Bran is coarse, low-grade flour. Coarse flour. Then the next time, they gave him water with sipuka. This is water with coarse bran with flour mixed into it. So it's a little bit more refined than pareh. So it goes pareh is the most coarse, then sipuka is a level up, and then flour, fine flour, is the third step of what they gave him. That's the most refined. So they gave him from coarse to refined until his intestines broadened little by little. That is the actual language. Okay, that's Rashi. Now we have to ask our questions. We're on page 108. Sha'ar Chatzar, the questions that we're going to ask and try to hopefully decipher in this section of this chapter. Number one, the whole incident with the shoes not fitting on Vespasian's feet, it seems bizarre. What exactly happened? Why was Vespasian distressed? On a more acute note, what was Vespasian trying to accomplish with his shoes? Because the Gemara makes it very vague. Was he trying to put them on, or was he taking them off? What was he in the middle of doing? A little bit it's a detailed, nuanced question, but I think it's important. If Vespasian's goal was to get the other shoe on, then why does our Gemara mention that he tried to take the shoe that was already on off?
That's simple answer.
In other words, what was he doing here? Why did he have just one shoe on? Was he in the middle of taking them on, putting them off? That's our question.
If the second step was that he was putting on the second shoe, I would assume, because that's how it says it in the Gemara, that he would have one shoe on, and then he said he tried to put the other shoe on. So I'm assuming he was putting them on.
Okay.
On.
Okay, fine. You can assume that. Let's see.
He tried taking them off because the other one of them wouldn't fit. He's like, you know what? Forget this. Let me just take it off. Like
So he was just confused at the moment.
He's like, what's
According
going
to-
on? He's like,
saying this
I'm not
shoe
gonna
is
walk around
fitting.
one
I'm not
shoe.
walking around one shoe. Yes.
I'm not gonna walk around
taking
one
both
shoe.
off.
I want to put both of them on.
So what's worse for a king? He just became king, by the way. What's worse for a king? To walk around with one shoe or no shoes?
I'm a king. I can do whatever I
One
want.
shoe.
One shoe.
I can do whatever I want.
No, a king walking on barefoot was a very bad look. It was a bad look.
I think one shoe is worse, just like because that catches the other.
One shoe is worse than barefoot.
Yeah.
Again, we don't live in those times, so we
Yeah.
don't really know.
Those societal norms back then, but
Okay, that's question one. Number two over here. Vespasian asks Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai again why he didn't come to him earlier. To which he answers, didn't I already tell you? And then Vespasian retorts, I told you also already. To which Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai has no response. Bring the discussion full circle. So this whole discussion already happened in section 2. What is the nature of their circular conversation here? What's the purpose? Why? That's question number 2. Question number 3. In what merit, what zichut, did Vespasian decide to grant Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai's request? Just because he figured out how to get the other shoe on?
See, right here it says to get the other shoe on. His goal is.
Okay, that's the assumption. So just because he figured out how to get the other shoe on, Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai deserved to have his wishes granted by the enemy? That's all it takes? Think about it. In the previous section of our Gemara, as well as here, Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai ends with no response to Vespasian, making Vespasian the winner. making Vespasian the winner in the exchange. Both times at the end, Vespasian got the last word. So why did he feel compelled to grant his requests? It's not like they had a verbal...
You said a king with no shoes on. You said it's apparently a big thing. He helped him out, not look like a fool. Was walking on one shoe with no shoes, whatever it was. He helped him throughout that situation, whatever it was, and he got important information.
So for that, it gets they're in the middle of a war, remember. For that, it gives him three requests.
A favor? He said,
3 favors.
And he only asked for one.
He only asked...
He said, I'll grant you one. Like he
Yeah.
said,
And then
He didn't say a number. He just asked me something of me. And he asked him 3. 1, 2, 3. 3 little things.
Huh.
What?
They were doable for him.
My question is, what did he do that deserved it? Okay, he helped him put on his shoe.
That's a big thing again. Let's say you...
So you're saying that's good
I
enough?
don't know, let's say you're on stage and you're in the stadium with 10,000 people and I help you out and I look like a fool. You can make whatever you want, bro. Like, you got
Okay.
it.
All right. Let's see. Maybe.
So maybe he knew he could have had the last word, and he let him win. So
That's another possibility. We'll see. We'll see. Because again, if you look at if you look at purely the verbal, contest that they had between each other, Vespasian gets the last word both times. So he quote unquote wins the conversation. So therefore, if he wins the conversation, why should Rabbi Yochanan Zakai get something?
pity.
You're saying Vespasian had pity on him? A Roman descendant of Esav, general? Pity? Maybe. I'm not saying no. Let's see. That's the point of this section, really, to brainstorm, to enjoy the questions, because then when you enjoy the questions, it makes you enjoy the answer so much more once we reach it. Next question here. Our Gemara here repeats the verse again from Isaiah 44:25 upon Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai. In the previous section of the chapter above, the Gemara claimed this verse about him to describe his silence. Right? When he was silent, the Chachamim said, oh, this verse applies to him, that Hashem turned back his knowledge. Again, we explained it much deeper, that really doesn't mean that. If you look at the previous section over there in the video 4, we explained that it was actually a praise of his knowledge. By the fact that he was silent, it was actually showing his knowledge. So Yisachel is actually Sechel, the intelligence, like we explained. Again, that's a deeper explanation. But according to the Pshat, it sounds like they said God turned off his knowledge. So that was in the section 2. But it did not provide an explanation, however, over there, for his logic for being silent. In section 2, it didn't. Section 2, when it said this verse about him, it didn't say an explanation for why he was silent.
I was just saying in
In the Chatzar Yosef, no.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the Gemara by itself.
Okay.
We did, right? But the Gemara did not provide explanation for his silence over there. In our Gemara here, in section 3, however, it reads the same verse about him, Isaiah 44:25, but it indeed offers an explanation for his seemingly inadequate response to Vespasian. What was the explanation our Gemara says? That he gauged that perhaps Vespasian would not grant him more than what he asked for. That's why he asked for 3 little things versus the one big thing of stop the war. Right? Our Gemara said that. So our Gemara defended him here, so to speak, outright. But in section 2, it didn't defend him. But the same verse was said about him in both places. That God turns off a wise one's knowledge sometimes. So it's inconsistent. Why over there you said the verse and you didn't back him up? Here you say the verse, but you back him up.
I think it's on what
Why the difference? Why does the Gemara defend him here and not there? Yes.
based on what you said, long and short versus very long.
You see, when you're reading the story, you're like, oh, okay, did you read this? It's a story. No, they're trying to teach you something. Why is it different?
I feel like, again, because you can compare both of them in terms of them being, like how you said the antonyms, they're really the same thing. I feel like one of them was more, I guess, defendable, and one of them wasn't. I feel like they were
You got to be more specific, Ronnie. What are you trying to say?
trying to articulate it.
Don't worry, we'll get to it in the Chatzar Yosef. Next question. Why did Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai request these 3 things specifically? Yavne, the sages of Yavne, what else? The doctors for Rabbi Tzadok, and the dynasty of Rabban Gamliel to be spared. Last question. Why did our Gemara find it necessary to detail the exact medical course of action that was taken to heal Rabbi Tzadok? How does this contribute to the story at all? Why give me the details? First day they gave him parei water. coarse flour, and then the second day they gave him sipuke water, and the last day they gave him flour water. And then what? Okay, Chazak Baruch, like how does it help me learn my learning over here?
Because it ties back to previously when Lee.
Right, it's the same Rabbi Tzadok from chapter 8 that we learned about, where he was eating dry figs and he was very malnourished, and then the lady ate his dry fig and she died.
She sent her servant, and she said, there's only corn flour, and get me the other one.
You're connected into that because it all started the story with it. Maybe that's a deep connection. Chapter 8, it's very interesting. Very interesting. I don't know if I actually mentioned that, but so that's a cool take. But you have to find the connection though. What is the connection? We'll see. All right, we have another 8 minutes, more or less. Let's start with some of the greater wise ones before us, the Amudei Chatzar, and see some of the explanations they offer. We only have the Maharsha, the Ben Yehoyada here, and the Chochmat Manoach, Maharal, 4 of them, but they're all kind of long, so we may have to start some today and continue next week. The Maharsha says, page 108, Vespasian was distressed that perhaps his foot swelled up because of a sickness of some sort. He thought he got sick. To that, Rabban Yochanan Zakkai assured him that it was only because of his excitement that his foot swelled up. Despite the fact that Vespasian surely had the means to get new shoes made for him, right? He was a king. Rabban Yochanan Zakkai wished to prove to Vespasian that it was not due to a sickness. So he told him that the remedy was to have someone with whom he is displeased pass in front of him, which would cause the bone to dry up, to reverse the swelling, and allow the other shoe to slip on. This remedy would not have worked if the swelling were due to a sickness. If he was sick, just having someone pass by and would not cure him from a sickness, and therefore he would have remained swelled up, and he would not have been able to put on a shoe. So this is Rabban Yochanan Zakkai's way of showing him his wisdom. After seeing this display of Rabban Yochanan Zakkai's wisdom, Vespasian repeats his question, meaning to say that Rabban Yochanan Zakkai should have used his wisdom, which he just displayed to him, to meet with him earlier, not after 3 years, right? And save themselves from the Baryonim. So he pushed him again on that. Look, you showed me how wise you are, and then, so that question resurfaced in his brain. Like, why did you wait 3 years to come talk to me? So Rabban Yochanan Zakkai responds that didn't I tell you already? In other words, that the Baryonim are also wise, and they were unable, and we, the rabbis, were unable to circumvent them. To which Vespasian responds, I too already told you, referring to the parable of the Drakon and the barrel of honey, which we spoke about in chapter 9, section 2. So, he just details us about the circular conversation more.
So one thing I don't understand, if
Yeah.
I may ask,
Sure.
the horror, obviously, this is not the first time this patient gets excited about something.
Mm-hmm.
So, are there any pirushim on the musag, the idea that what is this talking about? Because he got happy so many times before.
Right.
The horror, your bones should swell.
Is this the first time in his life it's happening, you're asking, right?
I mean, maybe
Well-
there's a deeper meaning behind what's going on here.
Yes, I think there is, and we'll get to it as well eventually. You don't have to agree with my understanding, but we'll get to it. Not in today's lecture because it's a few pages down. But again, I would, in response to you, I would say that yeah, he got excited before, sure, but did he ever get excited to this degree when you're appointed the king of an entire Roman Empire? You know, it could be excitement along with some apprehension and anxiety and a bunch of other things could cause this unusual reaction. It's very intense, very, very intense.
There's an idea also that the bones of the wicked rot. So maybe we can.
When they die, you mean?
The idea of bones rotting, the idea that the bones of the wicked rot. There's about the Hebrew expression, but there's an idea in the Chazal with the bones of the wicked rot. So maybe we can say that this was maybe the first time since he was appointed king that he could have done something from Tzidkut, maybe perhaps
Something righteous.
and maybe therefore, allegorically speaking, his bones, instead of rotting, became the opposite. I don't think we'll bring that down, but just because this idea doesn't make sense. It's the first time that his bones actually swelled up.
Okay,
So,
we'll keep it in mind. We'll see what they say here. Next one, Ben Yehoyada. It's kind of a long one, so let's try to do at least half of it. Says the Ben Yehoyada, which of course is the Ben Ish Chai's commentary on the Agadot, the stories of the Gemara. He says the following: the messenger surely only whispered the good news to Vespasian. That's the first thing he assumes. He says the messenger that came from Rome, he didn't announce it in front of everybody. He only whispered, "You're the king.
Why?
And then he swelled up. Now, of course, this, if you assume it this way, look at note number 2, meaning that Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai did not hear it, that he was appointed, that Vespasian was appointed king, and yet he was able to figure out what was happening on his own. The whole swelling situation, he got excited, because he already knew he was going to be king. He called, in the previous section, he said, "You're king." Right? This was the wisdom that Vespasian was so impressed with, that even though Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai didn't know, he felt it, and he knew it. So that's how the Ben Yehoyada approaches the Gemara. Now this detail is not said in the Gemara. It just says a messenger came and started speaking to Vespasian. Ben Yehoyada assumes it was a private one-on-one conversation between the messenger and Vespasian.
Even if he announced it, the messenger.
Yeah.
He called it 10 minutes ago, whenever the previous conversation said you're a king.
Right. So again, but the fact of the matter is the reaction that Vespasian got from it, the whole swelling situation of his feet, right? And that Rabbi Yochanan was the guy who watched this happen, and he gave him advice, and he was able to guide him through it, step by step, all the way from step 1 when he told him you're going to be king, through getting the shoes on.
Honestly, if he really was a smart guy, he could have piggybacked off of that super heavy. He could have remember what I told you 2 seconds ago that you're a king. This guy said
you're speaking with the king. You can't do that. You're speaking with the king.
You can say,
you have to speak.
They could
Smart, exactly. Well, you didn't learn from the past section. I see. Smartly stupid.
They could have used that quote for that. They could have used that quote that you should.
That time misachel.
Yeah.
Listen, the whole genius, as we explained in the previous section, the genius of Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai was knowing how to talk and how not to talk.
When?
Sometimes
how and when, yes.
To do is to act stupid.
And the stupid thing to do is to act smart.
Rabbi Mansur actually once said that it was a miracle that Rabbi Yochanan, instead of requesting for Islam to be saved, requested these 3, because since Hashem wanted the Beit HaMikdash to be destroyed, he purposely
asked for other things?
messed up his kavanah. So he asked for 3 things.
Hashem.
Yes.
That's how you explain it.
That's one of the things Rabbi Mansur said a long time ago. He quoted one of the Mepharshim and said it was a miracle.
Okay. So that's point 1 of the Ben Yehoyada. Point 2, that's kind of long. It's a very interesting point here. Let's read it through. It's kind of a story. I'll go through it quickly. Regarding why Vespasian offered to grant Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai's requests, right? We asked that question. What exactly compelled him to give him the requests? It can be understood based on what the Omer HaShichicha, which is a book that in the contemporary book of the time of the Ben Yehoyada, writes regarding a certain king of Spain, okay, who had picked up archery, shooting archers. What's it called? Shooting arrows. And invited a master of archery for a competition in the presence of all the king's court. So this king thinks he's good. He just picked up a hobby, but this guy is the expert. He says, "Come, we're going to have a competition." They set up a target, and then the king went first. All of the king's arrows hit the target, but were spread out along the surface of the target. Right? It wasn't in a bullseye. It was all over the place. Then the archery master went, who, out of respect for the king, missed the target every time. He missed. The target was here. He didn't get it. He could have got it on the target. He didn't get it on the target. But all of his misses, all of his arrows hit the exact same spot. See what he's doing? The crowd decided that the king had won. Once the king and the master were left alone, the master revealed what he did. That he allowed the king to win, and that he had the full ability to easily defeat the king. The king conceded, it says, "You're right." And he awarded the master with gifts. He says, "Thank you for not embarrassing me." He gave him gifts. No one could miss at the same spot so many times. That's skill, correct? The same sort of incident occurred in our Gemara, referring back to the previous section as well. Vespasian's challenge that wouldn't they break the barrel on the count of the dracon, right? That was the whole parable he gave him. It was an amateur challenge. Since the simple answer was that it would be better to remove the dracon with tongs and spare the barrel, as Rav Yosef Samser Be'ekiva pointed out in our Gemara there. The answer was simple, but Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai stayed silent. Even Vespasian himself knew the simple response to the challenge, but Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai stayed silent to avoid making it look like Vespasian lost the debate, to avert embarrassing Vespasian in front of his servants. Then, here in our Gemara, Vespasian checked him again. He made the circular argument again, saying, "I too already told you." He brought up the same point again. referring back to the same challenge, and Rabbi Chaim Zakai again remained silent. Even though he had the answer locked and loaded, ready to go, he stayed silent. Upholding Vespasian's honor, in this zechut, in this merit, Vespasian offered to grant the Rabbi Chaim Zakai his personal requests. That's how he compares it. Makes nice sense. I think it's a very nice explanation. So let's stop over there, and then we will continue B'ezrat Hashem next week in the Amudei Chatzar. Baruch Adonai Olam. Amen ve'amen.